Okay, everybody. Everyone had a good break? Good break? Mm-hmm. Okay. I guess we'll kind of jump straight in. Little outro first. Because it's only around 2 or 3 weeks till I'm off to Uman. And it's Rosh Hashanah.
Like 2 weeks.
2 weeks, maybe?
No, for like 2 weeks.
For like exactly 2 weeks. I figure we'll learn a piece or two from Orot HaTeshuva. And I'm so happy to be back after the summer break. It was a good break. It was relaxing, somewhat. And hey, it was good. It's good to be back. So I guess without any further ado, we're going to jump in. We're going to see today, it's on the photocopies. I have, if you have over there, Orot HaTeshuva, Perek Tes Vav, paragraph Yud. And Rav Kook, in general, I mean, you can't really sum up Orot HaTeshuva. Rav Kook himself would learn Orot HaTeshuva when it would come Elul. And he said when he wrote it, he was on such a high madrega. When he wrote Orot HaTeshuva, and he writes in the introduction, which would be Kedai to learn together, about how his woe to him if he speaks about tshuva, woe to him if he doesn't speak about tshuva. And he talks about how his whole entire essence is filled with the desire to talk about tshuva and speak about tshuva, and how tshuva stands on the top of the world. And on one hand, tshuva is the easiest thing in the world. A hear or tshuva, just the thought of tshuva is tshuva. On the other hand, it's the hardest thing to do, real tshuva, you know. And Rav Kook, this sefer is like a diamond, meaning to say it's always, every piece could be refracted through so many different lenses. And he really, really opens up the world of tshuva, you know, talking about tshuva of the body, tshuva of the soul, tshuva of the physicality. So, you know, it's like when you learn a piece of Rav Kook, you see the whole world is tshuva, you know? And anything you learn from Rav Kook, the whole world is that thing, you know? So I saw this piece over here, and I thought it would be good to learn. And what he's going to say over here, just to foreshadow a little bit, is about how tshuva is about finding yourself, getting to know yourself. Mike, as a therapist, appreciate this. And tshuva is living in congruence with your life. As we know, the existential therapists, they always spoke about losing authenticity and becoming alienated from yourself, which causes a deep anxiety, a deep angst, a deep depression, you know, when a person loses touch with themselves and loses their authenticity. And we know Irvin Yalom, Rollo May, Carl Rogers, all the humanist therapists spoke about the need and the desire to live authentically, and how all malady, spiritual, physical, psychological, all comes from losing our realness, losing our authenticity. And Rav Kook, of course, Rav Kook says something similar, but also takes it to the next level at the same time. You know, he's very much in line with the existential world of thinking, worldview, humanistic worldview. Although in other pieces and throughout Kisvei, Rav Kook, he knocks on the humanists. He says that the humanists are bad, the liberals are bad, you know? But in terms of this, he's going to talk about really, really learning about ourselves, you know? Which obviously reminds me of therapy, you know? He says a therapy board over here, okay? So okay, we'll just dive right in. When a person forgets their essence of their soul, who they really are. When we forget, we're Mashiach das, like we forget, like it's off the radar. Welcome. When we forget to take a look at our insides, the insides of our life, our inner world. Hakol nase mu'urvav u'mesupak. Welcome. Right? Hakol nase mu'urvav u'mesupak. Everything becomes filled with confusion and self-doubt. So he opens up with a bold line over here. Right? When we forget the essence of who we are, when we forget our soul, when we kishmasich das, like hesech das, like it's off the radar. We're just not even thinking about it. When we forget to look at our inner world of our true selves, we don't really take a deep look at ourselves. Hakol nase me'urvav u'mesupak. Everything becomes self-doubt, self-criticism, self-hatred. Everything becomes confusing, lack of clarity, right? And Rav Kook says, like we started with saying, that all this comes from not being authentic with yourself, not being real with yourself, not really knowing who you are, right? You can't really be real and authentic with yourself if you don't really know who you are. So life becomes confusing when we're not in touch with ourselves. The Teshuva hareshit, and the very first type of tshuva that a person needs to do, shehi me'ira es hamachshachim miyad, that automatically illuminates the darkness and the confusion, the inner anxiety, the sadness, what am I really good at? I was saying, I'm really good at avoidant, right? The avoidant behavior, fight or flight mode, right? All that comes from not knowing who you are. But what illuminates all that? He sheyashuv adam el atzmo, when a person begins to return to themselves, the el shorish nishmato, and the root of their soul, right? Everyone has a different shorish, right? We're mimicking this one and mimicking that one and pretending we're this one, pretending we're that one, but it's not you. It's not actually who you are. You're imitating someone else or some community or some idea. It's not actually you. Umiyad, and immediately, yashuv el elokim. Immediately that causes you to return to God. El hanishmat kol neshamot, the soul of all souls, right? God is the neshama of the world. Vayelech veyitzar hala mala mala bekedusha uptahara, and that allows a person to go up and up to higher levels of kedusha and purity. This is already amazing. Like you could just spend your whole life on these lines over here, right? That what happens is he's explaining that we're alienated from ourselves. And when we're alienated from ourselves, life becomes confusing, it becomes anxious, it becomes nervous, it becomes fearful, right? But what's the first tshuva? You have to know yourself. The first tshuva is getting to know yourself. Like, I'm a big fan of journaling. Take out the journal, try to do it at least once a week, and sit there, right? Why am I feeling this? Why am I feeling that? What's going on in my inner world? Right? Beginning to recognize your inner world, to allow yourself to know who you are and what it is that you're actually feeling. And it's so easy, right? I always say, like, to go from here to here is the hardest thing in the world, to be self-effacing, to face yourself. Facing ourselves, we'll do anything not to face ourselves. We'll do anything. We'll run around the world. We'll jump through this hoop, jump through that hoop. Anything to avoid sitting alone, spending time with myself, acknowledging my fears, my self-doubt, my criticism, my angst, my flaws, and my good points, right? As Rav Kook says over here, as he started with, when we forget our soul, right? In DBT, they talk about, like, we're not our thoughts and our feelings, we're something much greater, right? When you're in touch with your soul, it's not only your psychopathology, the psychological level, but obviously the spiritual level we're talking about is remembering our deeper nature. Like Rabbi Nachman says, Nekudah Tova, right? That everyone has a deeper nature, and that's our essential being. That our essential being is our soul, it's our Nekudah Tova, and that when we go deep below the water, when there's a storm on top of the ocean, you go deep, 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 even when there's a hurricane, eventually there's quiet, pristine calmness in the depths of the ocean, in the depths of the water, right? So we're raging and we're thinking and we're criticizing and we're blaming and we're doing all that stuff. But when you go deep into our Nekudah Tova, we go deep into who we actually are, we bypass all the storm and we go straight to the soul of the matter, you know? And that's really remembering our true identity. That's really remembering who we really are, right? And Rav Kook says right away, when we remember our deeper nature, when we remember who we are, immediately it illuminates all the darkness, it illuminates everything. V'davar zeh, now, of course, Rav Kook is going to take this to Rav Kook is going to continue to elevate this. V'davar zeh noheg bein ish yechidi, and this thing of remembering our true identity, of learning about who we are, learning our psychological world, our emotional world, our spiritual world, because all that comprises of who we are. I like to say we're human beings. Sometimes I'm working on the being, and sometimes I'm working on the human. And this thing of getting to know ourselves is every individual has to do. Bein ba'am shalim, whether it's a nation has to do, right? That's what our nation's doing now. We're duking it out. All the parts of our nation are figuring out what's the real Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael. Is it the far left? Is it the right? Is it the middle? Is it the this? Is it the that, right? Bein bechol hanoshiyut, right? Whether it's all of humanity. Bein b'tikon kol ha'avaya kula, or whether it has to do with the rectification of the entire existence from the beginning of the world till the end of the world, because we know there's no time by Hashem. So getting to know really what everything is about, nationhood, humanity. What does it mean to be a human being? Right? What does it mean? All of humanity, all of existence from the beginning of time to end of time has to know its true identity, its true nature. Because how much have we destroyed and the damage that's caused in existence from us forgetting ourselves, forgetting who we are and what we're about and what is the purpose of this world and what is the purpose of man, right? When we forget the reason for life and the reason for existence and the reason for humanity, then comes destruction, then comes damage, then comes the anxiety, then comes the war. V'im tomar, right? And if v'im tomar shehi chafsa l'shuv el Hashem, and if you want to say that I'm going to return to God, ves atzmo hi eno mitkonenet lekabetz estincheya, but you yourself, you're not willing to gather together the parts that you've put in exile. Harehi tshuva shel remiyah. That's considered a tricker, a false, a lying tshuva. Shetisa zeh et shem Hashem l'shava. That it's as if you've taken Hashem's name in vain. Right? So a person says, and they call this spiritual bypassing, right? I'm just going to return to God, but I'm not really going to face myself inwards and look at all the different varying parts of myself. He said, that's a deceitful tshuva. I'm going to bypass me and just look towards God, right? He says that's fake. That's taking Hashem's name in vain. And the very first, it's an amazing thing. It's like the IFS model. Like the IFS model of therapy says, we have different parts. We have all different, I have this part, I have that part, I have this part, I have that part. And, but I need to, the healing is the harmonizing and the union of all the parts, unblending and unenmeshing that a person can see their self, their deeper nature, right? So you unblend your parts with yourself, but there's a harmonizing and an embracing of the parts that a person feels. So what happens is Rav Kook is saying that a person who doesn't want to embrace their parts, because it seems scary, he even uses that word, Eno mitkonenet lekabes es nidcheya, the exiles, right? In IFS, they talk about your exiled parts and the parts you want to look at. It's literally the language of it, which is obviously Rav Kook came before Richard Schwartz, but a person who doesn't want to look at their parts and they just want to skip, I don't want to learn about myself, I just want to go straight to God. He said that's deceitful. You can't do it. You can't bypass yourself and then go straight to God, right? So like I did this for years and exposed this, like you want to daven for high things, like I want this, I want that, Hashem, bring the Geulah, bring your light into the world, do all these things, but then you're neglecting yourself, right? So you could fall into the pattern of avodas Hashem, of self-neglect, because I just want to focus on high and holy things, but you're bypassing yourself. The main person, the main thing that counts is you. So a person's always reaching for high things, and they're saying, me, I don't make a difference. I want to daven for Hashem's light in the world, which is good. You need to daven for Hashem's light in the world, but you also need to daven for yourself. So a person, I know for myself, you fall into self-abandonment and self-neglect because you're bypassing yourself, because you're saying, I don't really matter. I'm just going to daven for high and holy things. The fact that I need parnasa, or the fact that this one needs refuah, or the fact that I need this or that, the fact that I'm feeling a certain way, that doesn't make a difference. I'm going to go straight for the holy and high, right? So Rav Kook says when you bypass yourself and you don't really take stock in yourself because you're feeling shameful or you're feeling doubt or you're feeling whatever it is that you're feeling, right? So he says that's deceitful, and that's called taking Hashem's name in vain. So through learning about yourself, that's how you come close to God, from self to God. The Rav Kook is saying the more you look inward, the more you're going to come close to God. And if you bypass yourself, then it's fake. As they say, it's a cubic zirconia, it's a fugazi, it's a fake, So it's just an amazing thing. I was thinking like when you dig water on the beach, like you're digging on the beach, you dig, and you hit water eventually, right? So it's like when you go deep inside yourself, eventually you come to God, because our soul is a chelik elokal mamash. Our soul is a part of Hashem, right? So when you bypass yourself and you just say, well, I'm not important, no, Hashem thinks you're important. Hashem thinks that you're valuable. Hashem thinks that you're worthy. Hashem thinks you're mitzvahs. Hashem thinks you have a mission, right? You have something valuable to offer the world, right? But we bypass that and we say, no, I don't matter. That's deceitful, right? This bypasses the whole reason why Hashem put you here, to take a look at yourself. And through that, through learning about yourself, coming close to Hashem. Okay, it's amazing, right? It's amazing. I think it's amazing. I love this, Okay, rak be'emes hagadola shel tshuva el atzmo yishuv ha'adam va'am. Therefore, through the true bigness of returning of tshuva to yourself, yishuv ha'adam va'am. A person returns to man and the nation, ha'olam v'kol alamim, and the whole world and all the worlds return to itself. Havaya kula, all of existence starts to do tshuva. Elkona, to its creator. La'or ba'or hachayim, to the light of all lives. V'zehu, and it's like Rabbi Nachman says in Sichas Aran, like tshuva's kadma la'olam, like tshuva came before the world, So when you do tshuva, the whole world uplifts itself. As Carl Rogers, one of the great humanistic psychologists, used to say, everything desires return to its source. It's the whole world wants to return to its source. Or like we were, me and Effie, we went to, Dana was there also. We went to a Sinai tour. He was playing on Har Zaysim the other day on Rav Kook's yard site on Tuesday night. And one of the things he said was that the Mishnah says, Hakol olin la'eretz Yisrael. All the Jewish people, they go and they make olah l'regel to Eretz Yisrael. Do you have some water? Can I get a sip of water from your water? Thank you. Like something right there. Am I contaminating your bottle? Are you okay with that? Thank you. Thank you, Maishi. My throat's killing me. I'm boiling away in here. So he says, Hakol olin la'eretz Yisrael, that all the people go to olah l'regel, to Eretz Yisrael. So Sinai Torah was saying, Hakol olin, everything in Eretz Yisrael wants to go up. The dirt, the people, the cars, the animals, or the plant life. Hakol olin la'eretz Yisrael. Everything goes up in Eretz Yisrael, right? In the same way, all of existence has a soul, and all of existence wants to go up to its creator, right? And when we learn about that thing, and when we learn, and you go deep into that thing, even scientifically, you'll find out that it points towards God. You'll find out that it's deeply, intrinsically connected to Hashem. There's this Rav that I've been listening to online. He's very well known, Rav Ephraim Pavlanov. He's amazing. He's a scientist and he's a makubal, young guy, and basically he shows how everything connects with science. Like he shows like on a biological subatomical level how like everything is just connected to God. And he's a scientist and he's a Rav and like he knows everything. This guy, and it's like I'm like actually very impressed by him. So the whole creation, all of existence, apparently wants to live close to Hashem. B'zeh haraz shel Orot shel Mashiach, and this is the secret of the light of Mashiach. Hofat nishmat ha'olam, his appearance of his soul in the world. Shebeha'iru yishuv ha'olam l'shorsha havaya, that when it illuminates, Shebeha'iru, when the soul of Mashiach begins to illuminate in the world, yishuv ha'olam l'shorsh havaya, the whole world now returns to its root of creation. V'or Hashem alav yigaleh, and the light of Hashem begins to be revealed. Right? Because the whole thing of Mashiach is that he's going to show the way the world truly is, which is miraculous and amazing and awesome, and how everything, all of it, right? Rav Kook says in many places, this thematic Cookian thought, which is about the world is constantly in a state of process and moving towards Geulah, right? It's Ola v'mala, ola v'mala, ola v'mala, right? The world is constantly an ascending spiral upwards. That if you take all of humanity from all of existence, it's only moving towards one place, Geulah. It's constantly ascending to a higher place, as we've seen from Rav Kook, that he says the Yad Chazaka and the Zroa Netuya, right? He says the same energy from Geulas Mitzrayim has been put in the world, and it's Hashem's long hand of history constantly elevating, and a continual process of elevating the world, ascending the world, until we get to the Orot HaTeshuva, till we get to the final Geulah, where the world now reverts back to its original source of what it was at the time, right? That's what it says. When Mashiach comes, the world's going to go back to the state of Gan Eden, right? It's going to go back to its original intention. So the world's in a constant state of renewal, rejuvenation, and Mashiach is going to continue to reveal that in the world. Umimakor haTeshuva hagedola hazos yishav ha'adam el chai hakodesh shel haTeshuva ba'amta. And from the source of this great Teshuva, man will draw, Yishav ha'adam es chai hakodesh, man will draw from the life of holiness of Teshuva ba'amta, with it in its truth. Right? So here we have an amazing piece from Rav Kook, who talks about learning about yourself is part of the elevation process of the world that ultimately brings you close to God. Right? You can't bypass yourself, and we have to remember our soul, our Nekudah Tovas. And this is in direct contrast the way so many people look at Teshuva of guilt and fear and being hard on yourself and being self-criticism and having your inner critic take you over. It's like me and Effie were speaking. She says to me right before, I think it was Rosh Chodesh Elul, you said to me, so what are you taking on for Elul? You know? And I was like totally like dumbfounded. I was like, what? Take something on for Elul? Like, I'm trying so hard. Like, how am I going to take something on for Elul? You know? And then I saw this piece of Rav Kook who just says you have to learn about yourself. So I'm like, oh, that I do all year round. Like, that I'm good. Like, I'm always trying to learn about myself and journal and figure myself out more. So if you're in that process of self-discovery and learning about yourself and engaging yourself in a deep way, it doesn't have to be filled with guilt and shame. Right? It doesn't have to be, now I'm going to do something extra. But you're constantly involved in Teshuva, right? You're returning to yourself every single day. You're returning to what it means to be you, to live in authenticity. And if you don't do that, you're bypassing the system and you're just doing someone else's Teshuva, right? As Rabbi Nachman says, Tehillim is Masugal l'Teshuva. Saying Tehillim brings you to Teshuva. One of the reasons he explains is because then you find your tribe, and then you find your gate. And he says some people, they're mimicking people all day long, and they get to someone else's gate, right? You get to someone else's way of Teshuva, and you don't actually find your own, right? You could spend your whole life imitating someone else's gate of Teshuva, or not your own shar, right? So Rav Kook is saying that, no, you have to find your own gate of Teshuva, your own shar, your own personal pathway, right? And that's the lost princess. The lost princess is, after years of searching for the princess, he takes a shvil min hatzad. I'm going to take a side path, right? And that we learn about our own lost princess, our parts that are in exile, we start bringing them back in. And we start learning about ourselves. And we look inwards and we find our own lost princess. We begin the journey of continually searching for ourselves and our deeper nature and what's my gate, what's my purpose, what's my mission. But you can't skip that. If you just want to go straight to God, or you just want to leave yourself out of it, that's not Teshuva. You know, that's imitating someone else's avoda. That's mimicking. They say a story about the Sfas Emes and the Chiddushei Rim, the Ger Rebbes. That the Sfas Emes, he was a young boy when he became the Rebbe, and the Chiddushei Rim, I believe, was his grandfather. Was his grandfather, I think? His grandfather's father. The Chiddushei Rim, he was an older man, and the Sfas Emes was very young when he became. And the Chiddushei Rim, what he would do in Ger is he would have everyone, the minhag was to daven very late, like even past the Zman, and that's when they would daven. And the first thing the Sfas Emes instituted when he became the Rebbe is he said, no, everyone has to make Zman Tefillah, and he instituted early davening. And the elder Hasidim that were by his Zaidi, they said, what are you doing? You're not following in the ways of the Chiddushei Rim, the great Rebbe. He would daven late, now you're davening early. So the Sfas Emes says, he goes, no, I'm doing exactly following exactly the way of my grandfather. Why? Because my grandfather never imitated a person in his entire life. So I'm not going to do that either. Early Zvan Tefillah. Meaning to say, we don't want to imitate anyone. We want to be exactly ourselves. And they say another story of the Rav Simcha Banim of Shis, right? We know this is in line with the Ger line because Ger comes from Shis, right? And the Kutzker, being honest with yourself, the Amud Emes, right? So they say that famous story, but the story always had impacted me. They asked Rav Simcha Banim of Shis. He was blind at the end of his life. He used to call himself the Blindemis Banim, the blind Banim. So they asked him, Rav Simcha, if you could go back and be Avram Avinu, would you go back in time and be Avram Avinu? So Rav Simcha Banim would answer, Kedarko B'Kodesh, he'd say, no. Why? Because if I would go back and be Avraham, that means Avraham would have to be me. So at the end of the day, there'd still only be one Blindemis and one Avram. So I'll just be Blindemis. I'll just be me, right? Meaning to own yourself, to really own, not think that like, oh, I have to be this type of person, right? Everyone has a unique thing to bring to the world, and that is the tshuva, the uniqueness, the thing that we need to do. So we can't bypass that. We can't go ahead and start skipping. And the first level of thing is learning about yourself. And this is what Mashiach is going to show us, all about our unique missions, all about ourselves. Okay? I'm going to do one more piece over here. How are we doing on time? We're doing okay? Okay? One more piece. You have to leave early? Okay, that's okay. Enjoy. Thank you for coming. Okay, we're going to do one more piece over here. This is a piece in Orot HaKodesh. You have it on the photocopy just so you can see. It's Orot HaKodesh. Orot HaKodesh Chelik Bet. And they in Achdut HaKolelet. Okay? Just going to read this one last line, and then we'll, enjoy everyone. Right? It says, Ma'alat Hachlala, the amazingness, the advantage of Hachlala, which means inter-inclusion. Hachlala, to be kolel. Ma'alat Hachlala. So Rav Kook says this amazing thing over here. So what is it saying? It's Orot HaKodesh, Chelik Bet, in the section Achdut HaKolelet, oneness of inter-inclusion, the unification of things. It's piece 32. So just saw on the video, people know where this is. Okay? Every individual needs to find themselves within themselves. Right? You need to find yourself in yourself. Where else are you going to find yourself? Right? Right? It's like a cosmic joke. Hashem put the very thing we're looking for, we look every place else but within ourselves, right? And then once you become comfortable in your own skin, you find yourself within yourself, then you can find yourself in the world and in your surroundings. Shehu chevrato, which is your friends, siburo, your community, va'amo, and your nation. But it all starts with yourself. Hatzibur motze, now he says, Hatzibur motze it's atzmo ma'atzmo. And the community needs to find itself within itself. Va'achar כך hu motze it's atzmo be'anoshiot kula. And then you could find your place within all of humanity, right? This is what Am Yisrael is doing now. We're finding ourselves within ourselves. Who's Am Yisrael? What's Am Yisrael? What are we doing? And only then can we now go and be a light unto the nations of the world and say, this is what we're about. Humanity needs to find itself within itself in the beginning. And then we could find what is the purpose of all human existence. The world needs to find itself within itself. And afterwards, it could find itself within all the worlds that surround it. And all the spiritual worlds in general, and their inter-inclusion needs to find it, is refracting it out and out and out, right? It needs to find itself within itself. ואחר כך היא מוצא את עצמו בהכללה הסוג סוגית העליונה של כל העולמיות. And afterwards it could find its particular way of being from within the worlds. Halomiyut he motze et atzmo ba'atzmo, and all the worlds need to find itself in itself. Achar he motze et atzmo b'chos and malon, and afterwards it could find itself in all its glory, ba'or elyon, with its upper light, b'hamon achayim u'kor yimemehem ba'arat ha'olit, right? And it could find the root of its source. Be'az misachdut kol ha'karat halu yachad, then all the recognitions of everything become one with itself. They all become inter-included b'chlalut. V'chozeret v'nasut chativa achas, and they all return to its source and become one. Sheklalusihi adira le'ein cheker, because the inter-inclusion, to see how all the parts fit with the whole, it's unlimited. Upratiyoseh chasina, and its details become its protection. Tmima shlema muvletet ad ein ketz v'tachlit, right? It becomes perfectly whole, and it becomes until there's no bound. V'shetef ha'chaim holech v'shotef v'or ha'kadosh holech u'mitgaber v'sarim kechalim kol ma'nei bach, right? And all the world becomes inter-included and becomes holiness, one on top of one, on top of another, on top of another, right? So this process, this is amazing in Orot HaKodesh, right? So this process of finding ourselves within ourselves and learning about ourselves, as Rav Kook says at the end of his piece, this is the Orot Mashiach, right? That we see that the whole world is filled with inter-inclusion of holiness, but it all starts with finding ourselves within ourselves. It's like in one of Rabbi Nachman's stories, he talks about a map. He talks about this in the Seven Beggars. He talks about in another place that there's a map, there's a city, and in that city is found the city, and in that city is found the person, and in that person is found the person. In that place there's a map, and in that map is found the city, and in that map, right, it's like those picture and picture and picture and picture and picture and picture, and those videos never ending, right? So through finding ourselves, we find the picture and picture and picture and picture, right? That brings the Kedusha to the world, the Orot Mashiach. And that is Teshuva. That is one aspect, as Rav Kook says, there's one aspect of Teshuva, is from self to God, finding ourselves, and through finding ourselves, finding God.
Does Rav Kook use his own words to describe what it means to find yourself?
So he says in other places, right? So this is one major place where he talks about finding ourselves. But I think what he means is kind of what we're saying, like all the levels of ourselves, but ultimately to find that we're a soul. I think that's really what it means. Ultimately come to the recognition that we're really neshamas, right? There's some famous quote, we're not physical being, what is it? We're spiritual beings, and we're not, what's the quote, Mike? You know what it is?
We're Aaron.
Right, what is it?
We're not material beings on a spiritual journey, we're spiritual beings on a material journey.
Right, something like that, right? We're spiritual beings, and that's our journey, and whatever it is, So it's like when we see that all aspect is made up of the universal mind, the universal intelligence, and we're Hiskalel in God, right? That we're all part of the divine mind, and we're all just refracticals of Hashem's light. Like the Kabbalah talks about Adam HaKadmon, like there's this holographic man that makes all of us up, and we all have like those picture like on Sukkot, you get that picture, and has like a million faces on it because it's made up of other pictures, like one face made up of a million, just have that on Sukkot. It's like, that's who we really are, like we all make up the Adam HaKadmon, the universal man, and the supernal man, the holographic man, So that's what he's saying over here. You find ourselves within yourselves, but then you find the community within yourselves, but then you find the this and that and the world and everything, and ultimately we make up all of humanity, not just the Jewish people. All of existence is refracted, like we were talking about the Chidush Eirim before. He used to say, this world is like an upside down tree. The roots are in Shemayim, and everything we see comes down, So we should be zocheh to find ourselves, to not be scared of ourselves, to face ourselves, to do a tshuva of finding ourselves, which will ultimately, all roads lead to the same place, lead us back towards the Rebbeinu Shalom.